we're going to do is we're just going to talk about different things that are interacting on the subsystems, and then we're going to go through some exercises and kind of just address those two areas here. So what we have here is our lateral subsystem. That's going to be this one on the left, and what we have is our QL, or quadratus lumborum. This is a low back muscle. A lot of times that muscle can get a little tight if our one side is off and this subsystem isn't working well together. And this integrates too with like our posterior oblique subsystem. We have a little cross pull happening here, and they both really do in reality. They have those cross pulls going. But we have our QL, and then that goes into, connects into the sacrum and the top of the hip. And then we have our glute medius running across. That's going to attach into the top of the hip. And then this muscle here is our adductor, and it connects on both the front and the back side. Here I just depicted the posterior side of it, or the back side of the body. But we have adductor muscles that are more anterior on the front of the body. And then we also have our TFL, and that's the tensor fascia latae. That muscle connects into our IT band. So that muscle, a lot of people will have issues with, and they'll think they have IT band problems, but the reality of it is like the IT band is controlled by the TFL. So a lot of times there's a lot of other things going on. Maybe the TFL is not working as well. There's other things going on with the quads, like the big muscles in the front of the thigh. A lot of times there's other things going on with those muscles, and they think they're having an issue with the IT band, but it's occurring elsewhere. And a lot of times too, when people are foam rolling and they're like, man, I'm rolling my IT band and it's like killing me, a lot of times it's actually going to be their Vastus Lateralis, or their quad muscle, one of the four that's on the outside. So that muscle is really important. It actually connects on the front side, so I kind of had it like disappear the way I drew it. But if you can see, it comes up and then it kind of wraps around the front, and it's going to connect really on like this bony, outside of this bony prominence on the front of the hip. And then that runs down the side of the leg and runs. Once it gets down like first couple inches, it might be like 2.5, 3 inches down, it starts to turn into that the IT band, which is just a fascial layer there. It's a really important stability thing. It's important for knee stability. As you can see, that crosses over the knee. All this stuff really is going to be important to our stability, and specifically stability in like the frontal plane. So it's going to be really important for like the pelvis and the femur working together, right? So we have this side helping to hold up the pelvis, and then we have this stuff that's helping to hold the femur in place. So the adductor is going to help pull the femur in so it doesn't shift out too far. And we've talked about some of that, like pelvic shifting, in the past couple videos. If this muscle's not working well, then it shifts out, and that's going to demand more out of our glute, and then we could end up with tension out there. There's a lot of things that can occur, really. But what's important is that we make sure that we work this subsystem, and that we are training it and making sure that we can utilize it. And that will be a big thing. We'll go through some exercises to help out with that subsystem and kind of specifically work on those. And then we're going to go into our deep longitudinal subsystem. So what we have here is going to be our erectors. They run up all the way to the back of the neck. I didn't draw the whole thing. You get an idea. That runs up the spine, attaches to the spine. It's going to attach to the ribs out here. It's going to help keep us nice and tall. And then it's going to run down into our thoracolumbar fascia. So like this group of connective tissue in the back that helps hold all this stuff together. I just drew this on the side so you can kind of see that this whole area really is going to have thoracolumbar fascia all the way through the lumbar spine. And what happens through here, it actually is going to be part of like that sling idea where it has that cross pull. In this area here, it's going to connect to the sacrum, the thoracolumbar fascia is going to connect to the sacrum here, and then it is going to run into our sacrotuberous ligament here, and we're going to have this connection. It's a real deep ligament in there that helps. It connects on the front side of the pelvis, and then it runs through the pelvis, and it connects on like the inside of the sacrum. So your sacrum is going to be like right here. The low back connects into the pelvis and the hip area. That muscle connects on the front of the pelvis and attaches on the front side of this bone back here. So it's like real deep inside inside your pelvis, really. And that helps to keep everything nice and steady. And then going down into the hamstring, we have biceps femoris. It's going to run down behind the leg, and then that's going to cross over. So it's like starts on the inside of the pelvis, and then it's going to run to the outside of the knee. So it has that attachment on here, the bottom of the pelvis, and then it runs to the outside of the knee, and then that's going to run into our anterior tibialis. So that's and the peroneals also are going to be involved with that. So it's going to be down from here, across the leg, and then that runs down the side of the leg, and then it starts to wrap around. And anterior tibialis actually is going to end up finishing on the big toe. Like the tendon of that's going to run to the big toe. So it spirals around from big toe up to the side, and then up through into like basically like your groin area, the bottom of your pelvis. And you can see how that spirals around the leg, and then it starts to get into the pelvis, and then it spirals up to the opposite side of the spine. So training that too is gonna work with our subsystem, or our posterior oblique subsystem. It's gonna interact with that. All of these subsystems really interact with each other, in how they cross over, and some of the fascial lines are connected, but some of them they're not like in the same layer of fascia, but they still interact with each other. Like you can't really like split them apart and like, hey, you're not going to use this part of the subsystem and just that part of this subsystem. So it's really important to kind of just do specific exercises that are going to help you with that. And if you find an area within like the subsystem where like, hey, I'm doing this exercise and I can't feel it that well, then to me that's a good time to isolate that part of the body, and then kind of do an activation, try to get a little bit more sensory awareness in there, and then go ahead and work through, let's see if we can reintegrate that back in. So I'm going to go ahead and go through some exercises here. Just going to flip this around. So we'll start with our lateral subsystem. That's working the hip with the opposite low back muscle. First one that we'll do, and I need a mini band. We're going to go ahead and do, like, you can do this without a mini band, just getting into like a quarter squat position, bracing through the belly, and then just reaching and touching. And trying to stabilize through this hip and really working through that area nice and steady. That feels pretty easy. We can go ahead and make this a little harder, put a band around, and then just reach. You can touch, you can just reach and hover. It's going to make it a little harder, and you're really just trying to keep this leg nice and steady. You can work through the core some. this is also going to be challenging us on this side to help stabilize the pelvis, right? Because the leg isn't on the ground, it's just floating there. Something's got to keep that stabilized. So we'll be working through those areas. Another good one is going to be a little harder. We'll do a lateral step up. So I'm just going to use some yoga blocks here, just for the sake of the demonstration, but we can totally go higher with our step ups. But what you can do is just put the leg up, and for this one it's going to be lateral. So everything that's going to be happening here is going to occur in the frontal plane. So the frontal plane is more of the side-to-side action. Then we can step up and balance, pull this leg into hip flexion, and then we can work through pulling up. And as I do that, I'm going to be working through this outer part of the hip, working through here to help stabilize. And I'm also going to be working through this adductor. So as we get into like a little hip flexion and we bring this leg up and out to the side, it's going to start to stretch this muscle here. So in order for me to get up, I have to contract that. And then again, this leg is going to be floating. So we're going to be using that muscle in the back just for stability. It's not like it's working like squeezing like your leg will be squeezing. But it's going to be working to provide some intrinsic stability in that position. Definitely a great exercise. Lateral lunge. We can do curtsy lunges. These are going to be good exercises to challenge this subsystem. So same idea, working in the frontal plane. So good lateral lunge will get this thing stretched a little bit to pull into that position. And then we're going to work through side to side. So I can load up outer part of the glute, load up that adductor, pulling into that position. And as I'm pulling this leg in, I no longer have this leg on the ground. It's got to be stabilized. So we're going to be working through our core and that back area to help keep that pelvis in a good position. So we have to really stay steady through the core as we're working through our lateral lunges. Or when we go into our curtsy lunge, it's going to be different action, but it's going to still challenge us in that frontal plane. And we can reach and touch and then pull through, or we can reach and try to get a little bit of like a hover here. So I can reach across and not touch, right? And just hovering over there. And what I'm thinking about is trying to reach, load this hip up, and then as I pull through, I'm going to end up squeezing in both adductor and that glute medius to help pull the leg back into position. So as we reach across, we're getting a big stretch here. And then we're also going to be getting this to stretch a little bit. So you can feel that engage and then just pull that leg through. So a little bit more of a challenging exercise, I would say, for the curtsy lunge. And there's ways to make it more challenging too. Once you feel like you're pretty proficient, you could even make yourself go through like a curtsy step up. And that's going to be a really challenging exercise. Whoop. This leg has been a little off for me. But we can do a curtsy step up or just from a high to low position and work on that, that action. Still going to be in the frontal plane, still going to be challenging same areas. And it's a great exercise once you feel like you've built up a decent amount of stability and strength. And then I love that exercise. It's a great exercise. And then another one, this one, it could be considered, a sling exercise as far as the posterior oblique sling goes, and a little bit of the anterior oblique sling, but with the band setup here. So we're doing a band resisted step through. What's going to happen is it's going to make me work this inner thigh. I'll be working through TFL, this outer corner of the hip, to keep the leg from getting pulled out this direction. So I got to work to twist that in, or from keeping the leg from getting twisted out that direction. So I'm already under some tension here. And then I'm going to try to maintain that tension through the core. And then I'm just going to step through. And this is a great exercise to help get some gait mechanics going, getting our core to work, and then getting this subsystem to work with our walking mechanic, because we need these muscles to provide stability for the pelvis and the femur as we're walking. This is a real simple exercise, but it definitely provides tremendous benefit to stabilizing the pelvis, getting the core to work well with the leg, and then having all that stuff interact at the same time. And it's a great stability exercise. Definitely one you can start if you have issues with like walking with your feet turned out to the side. Definitely a good one to get started on. You think about like if you're walking this direction and you have a little bit of that duck walk kind of thing going on, this is going to literally force you to turn your leg in, because your body is going to resist that external force. It's not going to be in this position here and let that happen. Like it's going to resist that naturally. When we push into the body wants to push back, and that's a really cool reaction that the body has. We can use that to our advantage using bands to help create these like environments where like the body, it fights back, and then like we train it that way, and then it becomes a more natural feel. When you go for a walk, it's easier to keep your feet forward, it's easier to push off with your butt while you stabilize your femur and your pelvis with your TFL and your adductor, holding everything in place. You got your core on, and then when you walk, it's just a lot more natural to have that happen through your lumbopelvic hip complex, having all this stuff really working well together. Definitely some awesome benefits that you can get just for walking, but especially for like runners too, who have issues in their lower extremities because they're not holding on to like this area well. You know, runners can really benefit from doing stuff like that too, and you can start to make it a little bit more running specific. We can do running drills with that distraction happening too. But definitely, even if you're just a avid hiker and you love to get out there and hike and just see different things out in the woods, or taking just paved trails even, like it's good to do if you notice anything going on in your hips or your lower extremities, your lower legs. Definitely a great stability exercise. And then we're going to go into some of the stuff for our deep longitudinal subsystem. So that is going to be our upper back muscles down into our lower back, and then into that ligament deep in the pelvis, running down to the hamstring and into the side part of the leg. So one of my favorites, this one I get most people started off on because it really helps get everything in sync, and it's a simple exercise. Once you learn how to squat and you can drive your hips back, it's a really great total body exercise to get everything really working together, and it starts to improve posture pretty quick, because like you can really feel things working well synergistically or in tandem, or everything working together at the same time. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just have people start in the row position, and then as they lower down, go ahead and just reach the arms out in front. Try to keep a nice brace through the core, and then on the way up we're going to squeeze butt and hamstrings and the quads, and then we're going to pull back and row. So you can imagine all that tissue is contracting simultaneously, and we're trying to get all this stuff to work together. So we're really trying to just teach these muscles to be friends, basically. And sometimes after they haven't been friends for a while, they don't get along very well at first. So we want to introduce them to each other, get them working together well. Definitely one of my favorites. Hinge to a frontal raise. This is another one of my favorites. I like these exercises that are like compound exercises that make these subsystems work together, because they're like unique in the fact that they teach these mechanisms, and then when you go do it, like just in like your gardening or you're outside washing windows, like these tissues are going to start interacting better, and they won't be like out here washing windows all by it's lonesome with the arm. Like you'll be using your shoulder and middle of the back better if we can get this stuff working from like the center, from the core. So a hinge to a frontal raise, it's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to go ahead and hinge, and then as we pull the hips in, we'll go ahead and just lift up. And I'm going to maintain this contraction in the back of the leg through the butt, and then it actually is going to get a little bit of that cross pull, although we're moving in, like this is a square setup. Everything is really happening in the sagittal plane. What we could do is get into a little bit of a split stance once you're feeling more proficient, and do one at a time, and then hinge back, and then pull through, and then work that action too. So it just depends on where you're at with this, but we are trying to target through some of that opposite work. So this leg is squeezing, the opposite arm is coming forward, and that's going to help you kind of like put that in the position to where it has to do it. But I would start with, you know, both feet neutral, both arms coming up. Then you can finish here. You can go up higher if you feel like you want to get a little bit more squeeze out of the middle of the back. Definitely a great exercise to help get everything working together. Going into like a goblet lunge, you could use a dumbbell here. Like we could work like a reverse lunge. And everything that happens in the sagittal plane is pretty much going to challenge this area. But taking that weight, holding it in front, it's going to make you work a little bit in the middle of the back, keeping everything nice and tall. Then we can step through and just work some lunges here. And we're going to be working that interaction. So I like to get people pretty good on their exercises on 2 feet. And then once they're pretty proficient with that, you start to split those legs up and really working things individually, unilaterally. That's a big part of getting better at it, the movement, because even just me stepping back to where I just stepped back, like it required me to be on 1 foot at a time. It required me to be in a split stance, and nothing in life really happens in this perfect box setup or this perfect shape. Like we're always moving. We're always going to be ending up in split stances through walking, running. You're outside playing with your grandkids. You're always going to end up in these different split stances, and we need to be good in a split stance, but we have to be pretty good here first before I can go here and be pretty good. It's, at least in like terms of like training, the way I like to progress things. Definitely a great thing to have in your program though is having a little bit of each of these things to train the slings. And one other one that I really like here is going to be step up the balance, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this way, and what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and step up. We're going to go into a balance, and then we're going to press on the same side that we are bringing the leg out in front. So step up, balance, and then I'm going to press. So this is a little bit more of a challenging exercise, but I'm going to get this whole deep longitudinal subsystem working here with this action. So stepping up, balance, and press, and the more I get comfortable with this, the more I can get this to flow together. And that's a great exercise. It's definitely a little bit more advanced, but it's going to keep challenging that same subsystem, and really that's a big part of training, is to define those advancements that we can make and to build up on the foundation that we've already created. And once you get that stuff all working pretty well together, when you're in a pretty controlled environment, then you start to take some of that stability away. Maybe go into a single leg balance and doing some of that stuff. A little less controlled, but if you have the right neuromuscular control with that mental drive, like your body will learn how to calibrate that and be able to be in a controlled environment on one leg with your hand overhead. Like it is it's doable. Everybody can kind of develop that if they take the time through the training process, and you know, it might take somebody longer than it takes somebody else, but if you're working on these things and you're building up a good foundation and you're addressing these slings and these subsystems regularly in your training, like it's not like you just, you know, do it for a couple weeks. Like your subsystems need regular training. Like if you're not, then you're gonna miss out on some of that like motor response and some of that motor control and just in general, like the balance that you get. You're not gonna get that. And as we age, we certainly need to focus on balance. Flexibility becomes a thing that, you know, we need to focus on more, and sometimes you need to do some mobility things before you can get into those positions. But it's a really important part to keep yourself moving towards your goals, and to keep yourself moving towards a whole body like approach of training, like not just breaking things down to little pieces. We want to get everything working together, because in reality, when we're working outside and we're doing stuff in the yard or around the house or playing with the kids, with the grandkids, like you're using your whole body. And the better we get at using the whole body in our training, the better that's going to roll over into our everyday lives and make ourselves just feel better when we move, and not have to feel bad about, hey, I was out playing with the kids and now my knee is bothering me and my back's bothering me, and I won't be able to do that again for another couple weeks because I got to recover. That's just not fair, really. And we want to make sure that we train to get ourselves to a place where we can have that freedom to do that and not have to feel that way. We have to think about what we're doing to make sure that we put ourselves in a good position, but we want to be able to be in those positions to have fun and to live life to the fullest. So that is all I have for today. We'll be back in action here next Wednesday, and thank you all for stopping by and checking it out. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your week.